G'day legends. Every now and then I make a mixing video or I do a plugin demo and someone drops in the comments, yeah, but the source material already sounded so good. And, you know, that's a compliment in itself because I'm always trying to make the source material sound good. But, you know, they'll state that it just sounds like it came from a professional studio. That's another compliment because everything I do is done with a home studio environment. So everything I've ever done is tracked at home, in bedrooms, in lounge rooms. That's where I work. And you can get awesome results within those spaces. But I thought, let's dig back pretty far, back in my earlier days of recording when, you know, I was still making mistakes and I was working in a space that was really untreated. So this is back at my parents' house. They had a downstairs lounge room and it had tiled floors, brick walls, lots of reflections. It was a cool sounding space, but yeah, definitely not a perfect environment. But for drums, it does sound kind of cool. And that's what we're going to have a look at here is some drums recorded in that space. See how good we can make them sound. Home studio stuff. No special mics, track straight into like a 16 channel Firewire Mackie desk. No special preamps, nothing like that. It's pretty basic. So let's see what we can do with this. I want to try and use predominantly stock plugins, and I'm not going to rule out using samples, but let's see how far we can take this mix and whether they need samples to really enhance them near the end. So if you're sick of your lounge room drum recordings sounding like this, and you want to try and make them sound a bit more like this, then let's do it. So this is what the drums sound like with nothing done to them. They're just kind of leveled and panned a little bit. So that's what we're working with right there. It sounds okay. It sounds a bit out of phase, so we might quickly fix some phase stuff. But the big thing here that we just have to work with, that we don't really have a choice, is I've edited the toms destructively and I've cut out the bleed and then I've just like bounced them in place. And I don't have the original tom tracks, so we just have to deal with that. I don't think it's really going to be a problem. It just sounds a little choppy on its own. Okay, for starters, let's check the phase of the snare. Let's zoom in on a snare drum. We can see the snare bottom is out of phase, right? This one is going the opposite direction. I'm going to double click on this and then click on File and then come over to Functions and then we're going to click Invert. And now that has been set right. So our snare and our snare bottom should sound good together now. Yeah, there's no cancellation going on there. That's a low tuned snare with a lot of ring to it, isn't there? Okay, now let's check the phase of the snare with the overheads. So let's just zoom in on another snare transient. These are our overheads. So I'm going to drag these over to our marker here. Sounds pretty fat and punchy. And I'm going to do the same on the hi-hats and the ride. Just kind of line it up with where the snare transient is. So there's two room mics. I'm just going to quickly check the phase of those room mics against the kick and the snare. So basically I'm just going to turn the room mic up loud, put a gain plug-in on it, and then I'll just be able to phase flip it and just hear if we lose anything. So I'm just listening for like low end loss or sounds thinning out, and if they thin out, that's probably when things are a bit more out of phase. And so that's not what we want. So I've got kick and snare soloed and room one soloed. The kick has so much more thump when the phase is flipped, which sounds pretty cool. So I'm going to leave the phase flipped on room mic 1. Let's have a listen to room mic 2. That's a tricky one. I think that's kind of just whatever sounds best. We might compare the two room mics together and see how they sound phase-wise. Alright, so if they're both phase flipped, then it sounds good together. So we'll just run with that. So they're already sounding a lot punchier. Alright, we'll quickly check the tom phase and line it up with our overheads. So drag this over a bit, matching up down here with the overhead left. And then let's check the floor tom. Don't know if we've got any rolls on the floor tom. Yeah, we don't have any clear single hits of the floor tom. So what we might need to do is just check the phase with the gain plugin against our overheads. I think it's fine just where it is. Okay, so let's just compare what the phase alignment has done for us. So it already sounds like we've started EQing, but all we've done is just got things into phase. Now we can hear the actual low end of the snare, the fundamental of the snare is actually in there now, whereas before it was just getting cancelled out completely. So this is a better starting point. So now let's just start mixing this sucker up. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit that like button. So to start with, on the drum bus, I think I'm just gonna add a little bit of compression. So let's get our Logic compressor. I absolutely hate how all these UAD plugins show up here. And let's go with a stereo compressor. And I'm going to use the classic VCA. Let's just see how this sounds. I feel like that's kind of cool. Let's get some EQ on here. Maybe after compression. Vintage EQ collection. Let's do the vintage tube. Yeah, 8K sounding kind of cool. Not as much harshness in the cymbals. We might bring the overheads down just a tiny bit. Maybe just do a cut down here, maybe around 400 hertz. It's sounding okay. The cymbals are a little bright, but we might deal with that in a minute. I want to bring out the snap on the snare a bit better. That like really bright top end on this room mic. Let's get rid of some of that. So let's just grab like a EQ. So maybe it's channel EQ, it's high shelf. I'm just going to bring down these really high frequencies up above around 10K. Let's try something like that for now. See what the other room mic's like. This one's so much punchier. Let's just bring the room mic 1 down a little bit, get rid of some of that cymbal stuff that's going on. There's still a little bit of that ride cymbal brightness going on here. All right, it's sounding a bit better. With our overheads, let's select these together and right click and create a track stack. So then we can edit these together. Let's just go overheads. Cymbals are a little harsh. So let's just grab a channel EQ for this as well. That crash cymbal. Maybe we pull some 3 to 4K out. Then it sounds hissy. It sounds a bit better to me, but we are sucking a lot of that cymbal out, but the cymbal's just like really abrasive. I prefer the sound of that. Let's put a little bit of compression on our overheads, just sort of like glue them together a bit better. Let's go with our studio VCA. I feel like there's not heaps I want to do on those overheads. I just want to sort of chill out some of the harshness in the crash. Maybe pull out a little. Little mid-range dirt. Let's focus on our kick for a second. So it's very thumpy. There's not a lot of click or attack to it. Doesn't sound too bad in the mix, like it's a thumpy bass drum sound rather than like an aggressive bass drum sound, which kind of works for the style. But let's see if we can bring out a little bit of snap to it. So let's grab the vintage Tube EQ. That's kind of cool. We're getting a little bit of attack, just really cranking that 6K on the high band and then boosting around 48 hertz just to bring out some of the subby thump of the kick, and then attenuating the same frequency, which gives us that kind of like boost and then a cut afterwards, a little pull tech trick that you get going on. Let's see how that sounds. It's not going to cut as much out of it. I think that's kind of cool. Let's maybe cut maybe around like 300 hertz, little dip. So, not a bad transformation. Every now and then there's like a kick that's like hit really hard, which is kind of annoying. So we could maybe try and deal with that with a compressor, or we could at least just put a limiter on a compressor. So let's do the classic VCA maybe. Let's see how this sounds on the kick. And then let's turn our limiter on. Okay, and then we got to boost the gain to make it limit, which is kind of annoying. So we're kind of controlling the peak now. So I've boosted the gain so that we can hit the limiter, pull the threshold down to around -2, and then I've just got the output gain at -8.5. I'm just trying to like balance this all out so that we're not getting any extra level. Let's leave it like that for now. So we've got some EQ and some compression going on there. What about our snare drum? Snare doesn't really have the attack that I want to hear. Let's try adding a transient designer to this. So we're going to use Enveloper. This is like Logic's transient designer. So just a little bit like that, it's kind of helpful. Now let's get some compression on here. like what the classic VCA is doing, sort of just tightening up the sound. Doing that kind of DBX kind of thing. The bleed's not too bad on this either. I don't even know what microphone I used back then. But it sounds pretty good. There's hardly any cymbal bleed. It's awesome. These overheads are really bright. I think I'm going to pull back some of this high boost on the drum bass. That might have been a bit of a mistake at the start. And then we can bring back some of that brightness to our snare drum. So let's add vintage tube EQ on our snare drum, boost some 8K. Cut kind of around 800 hertz. Going out of phase. Let's flip over to linear phase. It's just some weird stuff with EQs, like for whatever reason, playing with this put it out of phase with everything. So flipping to linear phase usually fixes that kind of problem. So if you're having issues like that, try linear phase. You should be okay. Might even be worth checking our kick, putting that into linear. I think that sounds better. Let's just quickly hear what the raw drum sounded like. It's an improvement. I still feel like there's a bit to do here, but let's keep going. Okay, what I want to do is just grab a channel EQ. I feel like that sounds good. Just some little tweaks within the context of the mix there. Let's come back to our overheads. Let's chill out some of these high frequencies. You can hear the ambience of that room. It's just like a really big tiled brick space. Sounds kind of cool though. I think that's kind of cool. Just high attenuation around 12K. Just pulling back a little bit of that. I think we are getting a bit of bleed through the snare at the moment. So what I'm going to do is come up the top, maybe after the enveloper, and I'm going to add in expander. This is going to be our gate on the snare. So let's play with this a little bit. not too bad. Definitely cleans it up nicely. Now, obviously, if we were using other plugins, we could probably use like Silencer or Pro MB to deal with Cymbal Bleed, but because we're trying to keep it pretty stock here, the Expander does okay. Check out our toms real quick. Rack tom. Okay, not super pretty, but let's see what we can do with this. So we can get some edge to it. Some little popping sound there, but I don't think you can hear it in the context. It's just a bad sounding tom recording, isn't it? Now what I'd probably do is actually just get rid of that, because the first one sounds okay. And zoom in, find the front of this. Yeah, we had it pretty good. And this should be here. So we can see that's on the overhead. Yep, looks pretty good. I reckon we'd get away with just using the same tom twice. It's going to sound a bit better. So a little bit of a hack there. Again, phase, I'm not sure if it's something to do with this or when you push the drive harder, phase gets a bit funny here. I think that's sounding okay. Let's just do a little bit more on a channel EQ. Bring out a little bit more of the fundamental. Yeah, I think that's fine. Just level it. Cool. All right, now floor tom. Got a cool sound about it. Push some low end into that. Push the panning out a little harder to the right hand side. All right, so it's starting to get somewhere. Actually don't even know we need this ride cymbal mic. It's actually kind of annoying. The tiniest little bit of it. It's really bright. It's making the ride cymbal pop a little more. You just have to get that level right, otherwise it's just like, oh, too much cymbal. I'm going to combine these room mics into a track stack. So let's track stack those together. Rooms. And I'm going to add a little bit of extra space to these. So maybe a bit of reverb. I'm going to go with Chroma Reverb. It makes it sound pretty big. Maybe we can turn the decay down a touch. put some compression on this. I always like opto compression on room mics. It's just that slow, squishy kind of sound. I think it's really cool rather than like really fast and aggressive. I like that. I think it's cool. The room mics are adding a lot to the sound. All right, I'm gonna add a parallel send here. So just grab everything, send it to a bus 15. Gonna put this into our drums and gonna make some crushy parallel compression here. So to start with, let's send in our kick and snare. Get a compressor on here, and let's go with a studio FET to start with and see how this sounds. Kind of cool. And then let's add some EQ to this, maybe before. We go with the console EQ. Not sure if I'm loving it, but let's add a channel EQ in here as well. Pull some of the kick out. So that's kind of cool, getting some attitude to it now. Let's just put a limiter on the end of our drum bus because things are starting to get a little loud now and I want to rein this in a bit. It's kind of annoying there's no like auto gain on this. True peak off, let's just boost this up like 4 dBs and then pull it down 4 dBs, just like gain match it. All right, it's kind of getting there, sounding pretty cool. That reverb in the room mic was just a little too much. All right, how are we sounding against what we had before? It's coming along, it's pretty cool. Stock plugins are sounding all right. I haven't touched the hi-hats. I don't really feel like I need to, but let's have a look at them. I wouldn't touch those. If anything, all I would do while mixing that is I would automate that, and anytime the hi-hats disappear, then I would duck it back down a decent amount. So something like that. And you could do the same for the ride, like pull any bit when it's just hi-hats, pull that right down, and then kind of alternating between the two, which can also help reinforce their position because when the hi-hats get pulled down, the ride will come forward and it'll push it a little bit more to that side and you won't hear as much ride spill that could be getting picked up in the hi-hat mic. So it can kind of help force with the panning a little bit. The cymbals in this are just like not agreeing with me. We could try to de-esser on the cymbals and see if it helps smooth it out a little bit. Go with a filter, split, let's see if that works. 6K, 5K. sounds okay. I think I'm still hearing like cymbal bleed in the snare drum. Nah, as soon as the snare hits. Okay, let's see how it goes if we added silencer to this, because the cymbal bleed hurts. Now, I said we'd try and use as many stock plugins as possible. There's no plugin in Logic to kill cymbal bleed. So let's just go silencer on the snare and just see how that goes. Okay, so this is the expander. You know, I don't want to lose all of that tone. Or maybe we try Pro MB. I think that's doing what I need it to do. Let's add some EQ to the snare bottom. Nice. Might be worth putting an expander on the kick as well, just to tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to put it at the start of the chain. Kind of cool. One thing we could do is add a little bit of excitement to this and see if that sounds any good. So again, let's make another bus. We're going to put this in our drum bus as well. Call this Excite. And we're going to use the specialized exciter. All right, I'm gonna blend that in now. Pretty cool. It's kind of like using the Steven Slate revival kind of thing. Like that's what we're kind of pulling out of that, is that really fine, airy detail. So you can see I had it at 15 kilohertz. So really airy top end. I've got everything being fed into that, but I could boost the snare drum to really enhance the crack of the snare. Makes a massive difference, that. I pull the ride and the hats out of that a little bit. We've definitely come a long way, and these lounge room drums are starting to sound pretty cool. Let's just try a couple more little tricks here. Let's make another send with our kick and our snare and maybe our room mics. Another parallel processing bus here. And let's add some distortion to this. Let's try the clip distortion. Sounding kind of cool. Let's see how that sounds blended in. So there's some clipping options here within our compressor. On the snare, I'm going to put it on the hard and crunch it a bit. I'm pushing the makeup gain a lot to get it to distort. Adding a bit of character to it. I like that. I think that makes the snare sound way more lively. It actually makes it sound a bit thicker as well. Doing all good things to it. Still getting some annoying cymbal out of that room. So let's just go a little bit further with this. And I'm going to put an EQ at the top of our rooms group here. And we're just going to high pass and low pass it. So let's add some reverb to the snare drum. Let's put a send on the snare. And again, I'm gonna put this inside our drum track stack. So the snare reverb will go to the drum bus. Space Designer maybe. It's not too bad. Might put a little bit of reverb off the actual drum bus. So I'm going to do a reverb send off the drums. Make sure we send that into our mix bus and do some chroma verb maybe. Yeah, that's all right. Cleaning up that reverb on the room mics is just a little boomy sounding. Yeah, it's starting to sound pretty cool. Pull the enveloper off the snare. It's sounding a little aggressive now. Gonna pull it back to like 10%. I'm going to put the attack all the way up on the parallel compression just to make it more crunchy and take out a little bit of the transient that it's adding. I feel like the transient's a little harsh. Definitely sounding kind of fun. Pretty cool. Nice and fat and chunky. And that's no samples, stock plugins. We've got one instance of Pro MB in here, and that's our only little bit of cheating that's going on here. But there's nothing to get rid of Cymbal Bleed. Nothing works that well in Logic. Even without it. It's not too bad. Actually sounds kind of cool about it. Actually like it without Pro MB. How good's that? I think once we did this little bit of EQ and got rid of like the harshness up here, Cymbal Bleed doesn't sound too bad in there. So that's not like a super clean drum sound. That's like a little bit rock and roll. It's a bit dirty. It's not like a super polished drum sound, which I think is kind of cool. There's a bit of edge to it. There's a bit of crunch to the snare. Like, it's a big drum sound, especially compared to what we had originally. Massive difference. All right, let's say we wanted to add a sample to this, maybe to our kick and our snare. Let's just load on trigger 2 and just quickly chuck a sample in here and see if we can further enhance this. I'm gonna load up the Ludwig Modern. This is one of my samples from my trigger 2 sample pack. That's pretty nice, actually. It's always cool to see how far you can take drums before you add samples in, and then sometimes adding the samples in is just like the icing on the cake. Same for the snare. Let's see if we can add a snare sample in that's going to enhance this nicely. So this is just a duplicate snare, so I've just copied the channel, and now I'm just adding trigger 2 to it. So we're still keeping the original kick and the original snare that we just mixed, but we're just blending these samples in. And these are some new samples that I've been working on, but they're not quite ready yet. Soon. Very soon. Let's grab the Fat Boy snare. This is a deep snare drum. They definitely beef it up nicely. So pretty sweet for a lounge room drum recording. It sounds massive. That sounds like a studio quality drum mix right there. And that's just because we spent some time playing around with it, phase aligning it, getting things sounding cool, tweaking things, getting some samples in there. That's it. It sounds good. You know, there's charm to the raw drums, of course, but if we're trying to make it sound like a big polished drum mix, then I think we've kind of done it using pretty much just stock plugins. I took Pro and B out, so yeah, we just got all the stock stuff and then just chucked a couple of my samples in at the end just to show how we can really beef this thing up. And if you need some awesome drum samples, make sure you use the link in the description below and go and visit my website. Check out that Trigger 2 sample pack. It's got tons of awesome kicks, snares, and tom sounds that you can add to your drum mixes to enhance them. And another way that you can support this channel is anytime you need to grab a piece of gear, come to one of my videos, go into the description and find the Sweetwater affiliate link. Clicking on that link and then buying a piece of gear doesn't cost you anything extra, but a small commission comes back from the channel from any sale made. So that's just a really cool way of showing your support. Hope you guys found this helpful. Hope it gave you a couple ideas to better improve your drum mixes at home. If you want to check out another drum mixing video, then check out this next one coming up.